look at your. Everyone online, can you hear me? Somebody can type a message in chat just to let me.
We can hear
We can hear you.
All right, great. Hang on, I gotta mute my side. All right. Folks online, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Thinking that you can hear me. Okay, good.
We can hear you, Frank.
All right, welcome everyone. 6:41, we'll start our chapter meeting. My name is Frank Simmerjay. I'm the chapter president, and I welcome you to our June meeting. See if I can get back to these slides here. There we go. Today's agenda, we'll cover a couple of different things and then we'll introduce our guest speakers. So first of all, thank you very much for coming out. I know traffic was not great getting over here. I've heard some pretty long treks for some of you. I got lucky. I don't know, for some reason I got a gap, so it's like it wasn't that bad. It only took me less than an hour. I like that.
Traffic didn't seem to bother the bus system.
Traffic just worked for buses. Well, there you go. So I guess next time, isn't there a rail that's gonna be stopping like right out here soon?
Yes.
I hope. That'll actually be nice, it'd be practical. So that said, a couple of announcements. Actually, I don't know if we have any announcements. Talk about local conferences. Brief everybody about the CC program. We actually had a really successful first run of the CC program. And we, as a chapter, we have introduced a different model for how to present it. So I guess that's a great question is, how many of you are seeking potentially a CC or ISC2 or CISSP? One. The rest of you are certified? Certified? All right, well, great. Both people that are interested and for certified. I mean, obviously this organization is here for all of you. It's also an educational institution. So we're here to try to accelerate the adoption of everything from the certified cybersecurity all the way through if you're a CISSP and you're maintaining your CPDs. So I guess we won't spend as much time about talking about the CC training, but more as informative, since I don't think it's going to be as applicable if you're already a certified, unless you want your CC2. I don't know. And it's another test. And we know how much we all love the ISC2 tests, right? And then we'll do a quick test of your knowledge. So for those of you that are certified, this will be a great opportunity to, what? No? Okay.
Now, is that, test your knowledge?
Test your knowledge.
That's taken-
No, it cannot. It has to be at a testing center. It's a very random. I'll talk to that in just a second. I'll talk to the outcome of that. Board members, thank you very much for continuing to support our organization. For all of you that are present and online, these people ultimately make this chapter operate and keeps us going. So interestingly enough, in the room, we have a good turnout, and online we have a great turnout. Just to put things in perspective, we're just shy of 500 members. So we are actually a pretty large chapter, even though sometimes it seems like we're a very small community, but it's again, it's a benefit to all of you that we have a great organization. We have a couple of great sponsors that are, in fact, actually, Mark's not here today. Mark, are you online? You're supposed to be here, because you're going to pay for drinks, right? I don't know if he's online. Menlo Security and Coal Fire, definitely appreciate your support and sponsorship, and also Microsoft as an ongoing donor. Definitely appreciate all the funds. We always need a little bit, but we won't live entirely on the premise that we require this. But as an organization, it helps us keep things like our food coming. 4 CPE submissions for all of you that are certified and you want your credits today. Sign in to the meeting. We are not going to pass around a piece of paper anymore, just for the mere fact that reading handwriting a lot of times is difficult and gets moved around.
Can we do this after the meeting?
You can do
My
it.
cell coverage is loud.
You can do it after the meeting, and that should be fine. That should be fine. So make sure you collect your CPEs. We obviously give those credits. Likewise, about our social media, when possible, we post the meetings online. We have our LinkedIn page and also our website. I would recommend, if you haven't seen our website, go to it frequently. It's all the information about upcoming events and meetings are going to be posted there. A couple of conferences that are coming up. So obviously the one in the left corner, many of you may not attend, which I won't be entirely upset. I'll be presenting though. ThreatModCon is going to be in Lisbon, so it's okay if you say you just can't come. I'm all right with that, but I'll be there. If you do actually decide to come to Lisbon on June 29th, you can look me up. Other events, we have September, the SASE Summit in Seattle and Secure World. So we will be doing our big event ultimately at Secure World. We have historically supported that event, and you'll see us there, including our monthly meeting will be held during a breakfast, right? That's what I think.
Yeah, this is 2 days, it's not 3.
I don't know. So I don't know if it's 5 to 8 or 5 to 7. So that may be an error. Anyway, we'll revise that if that's a mistake. And then an interface in December. Anybody get a chance to go to B-side? Because that was an event that just recently occurred. Good news, bad news, was it worthwhile? Good event?
I think they had
I had shake, so okay, so anywhere from it was okay to it was good.
It was great.
All right. All right, a little bit about the CC. So for anybody online or in the room, and if you're interested, there's actually another opportunity for folks that are certified and are interested in potentially being helping out and even doing mentoring or training. So we as an organization hosted an event at the University of Washington Bothell where we kind of pioneered a different way of approaching the training. There are 5 domains that you want to also, no? Okay, fine. There are 5 domains to cover during the training. So instead of the domains for a CISSP, they are designed to be a little bit less intensive, even though admittedly, I'll tell you that looking at the questions, they are pretty tough questions. It's still 100 questions that you have to write. It is an in-person test that you still have to pass. The benefits is you get certified and you don't need the 5 years of work experience. So the CC, what ISC2 is doing right now is they're trying to get 1 million people through this program. So there is actually a pretty heavy push from the organization, but as a chapter, that also means that we have an opportunity to try to help individuals to get through that. The program that we ran at the University of Washington, we had originally 40 people that signed up, 28 of them that actually went through the registration process, 27 of them that enrolled in the actual course material, which is the reading material that's required. Currently, no one's passed and no one's done, no one's become a member, but this is only about a month old. What we're watching for is the people that are actually going through the program, that they're actually going to sign up for the exam.
To be fair, no one's failed either.
Oh, no one's failed. No one's passed.
Exam yet.
Yeah, this is Schrodinger's cat. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We're not going to open the box quite yet, but at least we know that there is effort. So with the feedback though we received during the engagement, and here's the thing that we did different, is that we created a study group where we allowed individuals to basically read through the material, the 5 domains. And again, as CISSPs, we were there to mentor the individuals on a Slack channel, or in the future, maybe it's a different one. We mentor them through, we help them through 5 weeks prior, and then we have a workshop at the end. The workshop is a 1-day or half-day intensive where I ended up covering all 5 domains. Feedback was extremely positive, and my intention is that we'll do this again. The volunteer requirement is relatively low. That's one of the things that I think trying to do training where if I were to say, hey, would you like to do training? And then now you're covering a lot of material. There's 5 weeks of it, very difficult. This is more of a learn on your own. And at the end of the 5 weeks, we'll do some coaching. We'll help you through through this workshop, and then you're off. So what I'm looking forward to see are people making it all the way to becoming CC members. Where does this lead to is that, at least initial feedback merits the fact that we will host again additional workshops. We'll probably do one during Secure World and possibly, one during one more during. So see, November, that's fall, right?
Yeah.
So one more maybe in the summer. So again, we'll kind of come up with some dates. So if there are some interests, definitely contact membership at ISC2 Seattle and show interest. If we round up enough people, we'll accelerate that program and get you onboarded. Any questions about the CC program before I move on? No,
I
great.
think you could want to say what's included in the package. 'Cause it's not
What's
like-
included in the package? Currently in the package, you get all the training material and a test for free. So
Actually, a lot of.
it's,
value.
it's an extremely expensive program. Once it's actually going to be sold, it'll probably sell for a lot more. Like, of course, every course, I'm sure, if you know, ISC2 does charge a lot for its tests. So you get a test for free, if nothing else. That's actually a huge value right there. And obviously you get a workshop. So it's a great opportunity to pass this exam, which can be something that's daunting, and become a certified cybersecurity specialist.
What are the CE requirements after you pass it?
CPE requirements, yeah, continuing professional education requirement exists. I believe the numbers are lower. I'd have to take a look. Do you know? 45 CPEs? Okay, so it's a lot lower. Okay, and then you also have to pay your dues, right? So ISC2 definitely does get a little bit of skin in the game, because you will end up becoming a full-time paying member. So you're a CC?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Oh, wonderful, great. So you're a very early adopter then of the CC.
Yeah. it is that.
That's great. No, it's great. I mean, you're the first graduate I've met of the CC program, so congratulations.
Oh.
From this area. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering what employers. So I know you said at Microsoft, like you value this guy.
We value the certification that ISC2 provides. So it's actually extremely valuable. Even the CC program is extremely valuable.
People worked 17 years ago. So we even a strong supporter of the law.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's super valuable. Yeah, being certified, doesn't matter which one of those ISC2 certifications, it is a value, and especially from an employer perspective, when I consider, and as Doug pointed out, in his history too, you see the certification number, that definitely raises the value of that particular resume, especially when you're inundated with hundreds of them.
I think AMF you pay only once.
AMF, it's annual. Yeah, it's a annual annual maintenance fee. Yes,
Even if you have a CISSP.
Correct.
pay only once.
you pay one and you get all. It covers all of it. Yes, and same. I think even the CPEs, it's collected too. So if you have multiple certifications, it's not like you have to. It's not accrued. So I think is 80 per year for CISSP, isn't it? 40 per year.
120 for 3.
Right, but they don't, I don't think it's like, so if you had several certifications, you wouldn't have to, like, it's not an accrued, like you wouldn't have to have 80 or 100.
Your
highest level.
It's the highest one that you have to
Unless
select.
it's ISSCP or ISSCP where you have architecture specific CPE.
So if there's specific certifications, there may be some additional requirements. Intricacies of how ISC2 collects its blood is a little bit outside of my knowledge.
Microsoft licensing program. right?
Microsoft licensing program. That's very similar. All right, we'll test your knowledge. So for the certified folks, this is do you remember this stuff? And for those of you that are potentially thinking about in the future, these are the types of questions you can expect during the test. So question number one, I'll just quickly cover only a couple of questions. So which one of these protocols is an open industry standard protocol for exchanging of network flow records? So we have IP flow, NetFlow 5, NetFlow 9, or IP fix. All right. Anybody think that it's A? Hands up, no? B or C, those seem kind of like, how about D? All right, we have some confident hands going up and saying it's D, and the answer is D. So it is the Internet Protocol Flow Information Export. Because acronyms make so much sense. Question number 2. So Fred is loading evidence from several hard drives into a forensics analysis system. As he reviews the evidence, he wants to organize in several different ways, by device, by investigation theory, by user. What method would allow him to organize this best? Printouts, file names, folders, or tags? All right, printouts. No? File names. Seems pretty good. Folders? Okay, tags. All right. It is absolutely tags. And key thing here is you can apply multiple tags to a single piece of evidence, which is actually a pretty practical way of doing things. Last question. During what stage of e-discovery process does an organization share evidence with opposing parties? Does our attorney feel like you're not gonna answer that one? I hope you know the answer. Okay. Collection, production, preservation, or analysis? How about collection? Probably too early, right? Production? Preservation? No hands? Or analysis? On the analysis. That's actually the answer is the production while you're producing the material. Is there?
No, that's correct.
It's correct?
Yeah.
All right. And any thoughts on what people should know about this?
I'm not sure, it's not really a phase, like discovery is either open or closed. And all through the discovery process, you can get requests for production of documents.
So production of documents, yeah, it makes sense. Sounds different too when you say production of documents.
Yeah, they usually have 30 days to respond.
All right. On to our speaker, Doug. Instead of introducing you, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and I'm gonna do the swap of presentation, which takes, now all of a sudden I have to be a technical guru here and juggle stuff around. So Doug Cavit, our presenter, I'll let him intro himself. Meanwhile, I'm gonna pull up his presentation so that everybody has it. Camera's over there, just so you're aware. All right.
Hopefully you hear me. I'm gonna try to get a little closer.
Yeah, I think might want to get over here.
So hopefully we won't lose continuity here on Zoom with the microphone. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming out. I know I had a fun time in traffic today, so I appreciate everyone that came in person to show up today. And I also appreciate everyone on Zoom too. I know you're showing up as well. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you and get a chance to share a little bit of what I do and how a little bit of my knowledge about what's going on. Just to give you a bit of my background, I'm the CISO currently in Snohomish County. So I'm responsible for all of the security for Snohomish County. Yes, sir.
An immediate question, how long has Snohomish County had a CISO?
They've had a CISO for, I think, about 2 years. I've been there since March. The person who's in the role before me retired, so I came in the role in March of this year. I'm not relatively new at Snohomish County.
So it's interesting when different levels of government start having CISOs versus not, it's relatively new, I think.
It is. King County does.
Yes.
Snohomish County does. I think Pierce County does. I know that the Port of Seattle does. I meet once a month with all the CISOs of all the major institutions in the state, and we get together once a month for an hour and cry on each other's shoulder, and then after we get past the sobbing, we actually get to real life business and share best practices and knowledge and different things. Frank would recognize this as an old Microsoft format. Once you get embroiled in your brain for doing it for as many years as I did, you can't get away from it. So I fully confess this is an old Microsoft format. Anyway, to say a little bit about me, as I say, currently CISO, been there since March. Before that, I was with a startup called Contain that did DevSecOps for containerization and virtualization across all platform neutral systems. And so I was doing work around compliance across all the major, both domestic and foreign compliance regimes, in a way that you can map it and use it within either containers, either using standard containerization, Docker, or using VMs of any flavor across all different cloud platforms. So I've been very deeply enmeshed in cloud platforms for a long time. It's been kind of nice to be back to actually touchy-feely servers in a server room as opposed to all the ephemera across the web browser. So it's nice to do a little bit of that. And before that, I was chief security strategist for Microsoft. I did that role for about 6 years at Microsoft, and was heavily involved in the security development lifecycle, was heavily involved in working with the Fortune 500 in terms of carrying Microsoft's best practices across there. Also was heavily involved in a lot of internal security practices back when Microsoft actually did security. Sorry, Frank, but we're getting back to it. They're getting back to the roots. So they're doing good stuff now. So anyway, so actually doing all that work, I came into Microsoft actually.
Neglected to mention that you're also a Microsoft legend when it comes to secure development lifecycle.
Yeah, I did a bit of work on that. Before that, I was actually came in the Microsoft to do a Windows Live OneCare. So I actually brought anti-malware to Microsoft. I was before that, I was CIO of McAfee. So I actually came with a large contingent of McAfee folks into Microsoft to do anti-malware. And we did, I worked on, when I first came though, I came right in the middle of Windows XP SP2. So I actually worked on Windows XP SP2. So Security Center is always one of my things that I always am very happy about working with Rebecca Norlander on and other people about getting that one out the door. So that was something I did work on then, but then actually worked on Windows Live OneCare. And we actually did some of the first virtualization and containerization work that was, and microservices work that was done anywhere. And we have several patents on it, what we did for Live OneCare. We actually had a system in Windows Live OneCare where we could deploy an architecture from nothing to bare metal to running services with databases and everything else, all through infrastructure as code. So we were doing infrastructure and code in 2005. As we actually were delivering that. We have patents for it. We've since, I think, used them for Microsoft. I should say, has probably used them for all kinds of interesting things since then. For that, I was CIO of McAfee. I grew McAfee from 70 employees to 1,000 and $1 billion in revenue and took it public. So that picture of me with dark hair was actually before Microsoft, I think. But anyway, that was actually my Microsoft picture. That was when I was chief security strategist at Microsoft. That's the last time I actually had time to actually have a professional photographer take a picture of me. I haven't had any time since. Anyway, so that's a little bit about me and what I do day to day. I have to issue a disclaimer. What you're hearing from me is from me as a professional, not from me in my role as CISO of Snohomish County. None of this represents Snohomish County. It's just my own opinion on different things. The side project I've been doing, because every person has to have a hobby, is I've been cooperating with CISA and sitting in meetings and working through a virtual team for 1.5 years on SBOMs. And working through about what we're doing about SBOMs, especially how SBOMs work with cloud services, and working with Google, Oracle, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, and a couple of other major players and some minor players in terms of trying to put together the standards around what we want to see for cloud SBOMs. So this is hot off the press. The paper was just published, I think 2 weeks ago, right at RSA was when the paper was published from CISA about SBOMs, and there's a reference in the title here. That's the actual document that I think, maybe I link it's old, but anyway, it's on the CISA website amongst all the other documents. You'll find one about software transparency in SaaS environments is what it is. And so the idea here is we're trying to put out a common set of terminology, a common set of expectations, and a common set of ideas around SBOMs. And I'm going to talk about what SBOMs are. So if you don't know what SBOM is, that's fine. They're new, but they're going to be very important in your life coming up. And that's why I want to have a chance to talk to you a little bit about that. Questions, please feel free to ask anytime. I spent my whole career doing these, so happy to have you ask questions. And if it's about the topic, great. If it's not, keep it to the end, and then we'll pick it up at the end if it's off topic. So happy to take off topic stuff. Let's do it at the end, not in the middle. So it makes it a little easier for folks to follow along on what we're doing here. Accountability is here. And I don't want to have people running from the room, but this is important. This is about, I think this one was related. This came out after the SolarWinds, but this is related to the SolarWinds. So I don't know if you were aware of that. Was actually charged by the Security and Exchange Commission with criminal liability. And there's now been a second one that I'm aware of that I think has been charged with criminal liability. And so this is, and that's why your ISC squared, ISSP is important, because that gives you some credibility to stand on to say, look, I've got now, I'm a professional, really, I'm certified. when it comes time to go to court. So there is some merit to doing this. It's just nothing else, it's a personal, professional defensive measure. But this stuff matters now. You have to pay attention. You have to be professional about it. You cannot hide stuff. You cannot, let stuff go by. You have a professional obligation to the board and to yourself, because you're the one that's criminally liable, not the company. Well, it could be both, actually, I should say. But you have a responsibility. So this is important stuff that we need to pay attention to. And the government's starting to hold people accountable. I think they're holding wrong people accountable. Frankly, I used to fight against software liability. I think it's the software vendors who should be held accountable. But that being said, steps are good. So this is down the road. We're heading down the road, but this is the path where that's going. We're now trying to get the software vendors accountable. Secure by Design is something CISA just announced at RSA that they're doing, which I think is great. They're having people sign a pledge, over 140 companies, that you better do MFA, default passwords, reduce classes of vulnerabilities. That's like pick a class, memory overflows, SQL injections, take your pick. You're going to eliminate that class of vulnerabilities as you write your product. Security patches in some kind of rational way. Vulnerability disclosure policy. You're basically having a way of putting out vulnerabilities through CVE, and then evidence of intrusions if that's what you're called upon to show where that you've done the work. I would have preferred that they had some kind of SDL or something like that to go with this, but hey, I'll take whatever we can get at this stage. But this is at least, they've got major players signed on to this. A lot of other companies have signed on to this, and so this is out there. If you're working for companies that are buying software, start asking. We don't ask, they're not going to do it. So I've put in Snohomish County, I've instituted, you will not do business with us without two things. You will not do business with us without an SBOM. You will not do business with us without having have signed a Secure by Design pledge. And I'm starting to push that hard into the organization to do that. So that was me in my official capacity. Now I'll go back to my personal capacity. But I think this is important. But accountability, and this kind of accountability is coming, and so we need to pay attention to that as well. And as you can see, this threads through in the SBOM story. So I'm building the story for you here about how these things come together. This is from, actually stole this from KPMG, but they're one of the big accounting firms. But basically what they're saying is they're talking about TPRM, and what TPRM is really trying to do is that's where they're trying to put together programs where they're holding software vendors accountable. This is about your vendor management. This is about holding your vendors accountable in terms of how they're doing their security, how they're exposing risk to you, so you can make informed risk decisions. People are starting to figure out that third-party risk management is important, and that's something they need to be paying attention to. And this is more and more taking up time on everyone's radar as CISOs, that you have to be thinking about, what's my third party? Where are they? What's happening? How they things, where they are in the process, and how that's working. So that's important. And then we got open source world. And I like open source. I use a lot of open source, but open source comes with baggage. Anybody who's used it will know right away. But that's, we're now heavily dependent on it, whether you want to or not, and it's everywhere. Log4j proved that this is, you think you aren't, you are. It's there somewhere, I guarantee it. It's just everywhere. As I say, everywhere and growing. It's dependency hell. You've all been through this. Anybody who's ever compiled anything knows that this is, only the uninitiated or the desperate tread into trying to recompile something anymore, because it's just so awful. And I know that we've done all those great containerizations like Flatpak and stuff, which are all great and wonderful until you can't get it to work, or it doesn't work in your architecture, and you're back to having to compile it again. So for all this great stuff, I still wind up compiling stuff. I still don't understand how I wind up doing the things I was doing back in 1996. When I was compiling Linux kernels in 1996. I don't understand why I'm still doing that, but I am. Who supports and fixes it? Well, you, but clearly, you have to ask that question about these stacks that are out there. And then everyone has a fuzzer and they know how to use it. And that's the big thing that I think is important, is that it used to be, there was the people in the back room at Microsoft that had the fuzzers, and they were the ones finding all this cool stuff, and nobody knew about it. Nobody knew they'd do it and whatnot. You can fuzz stuff all day with all kinds of interesting AI accoutrements attached to it now on a cloud basis for anything. Just throw it to the dogs and let it crawl through and see what comes up that's interesting. So there's a lot of this going on now, and cloud infrastructure is made just excruciatingly simple. So, and the problem is developers and companies haven't tied that knot to say that these tools are out there. And that's important to know that this is out there. And as we went through with, you know, we had two other problems now. I don't know, everyone's familiar with the SSH problem we just had with people starting to, you know, doing backdoors in SSH, which is very special. And then we also had the other one, which was the fact that we've got, it's a demographic trend, but we have a lot of folks that used to maintain stuff that are now, you know, sadly either retiring or passing away. And we had these orphan zombie things that are kind of important. Like there was like a time protocol, which is at the whole basis of all our time syncing, was one guy in his basement who was in his 80s, who was maintaining it. And they finally had to find somebody somewhere to take it, to maintain it, because the whole day, you know, the whole infrastructure of the internet depended on this one guy in his basement who was 80 years old, who had been writing this thing and maintaining it for his entire career. That's the sort of, you know, wobbly mess that's out there. So, you know, and again, you can't escape it. It's just out there.
You got the XZ situation,
Right.
right? Now imagine there's gonna be a lot more. That's just one example.
It's full of it. I mean, it really is full of it. And so what do you do about it? Well, you can inventory it, which is helpful. You know, at least with open source, there are SBOM scanners. I'll talk about those a little bit. That you can use. At least you can inventory it and know what's in it. And if you can inventory it, at least you can see where it is and know what's going on with it. Keep the variations down for the same task. Just because somebody came out with a new fork doesn't mean you need it. You can live just fine with a spoon and a knife. You don't need a new fork. You know, please, you know, keep it down and stick with things, you know, that you can keep consistency. Have a patch and version strategy in place. Think about that, because you know, like I have an application that's open source that I love, that I run all the time on my systems. But the problem is this guy releases a new version like every 2 weeks. And it drives me crazy because every time I go to use it, I gotta update it. And the patches are random, you know, they're, some new feature or some new something. And so you have to think about, I have actually had an active thing where once a month I patch it. Otherwise, if it's not a security patch, I ignore it. And just have a strategist around that. Because otherwise, I would be consistently applying that patch and updating every time I want to go try to use an application. And this, you know, multiply that by across an entire infrastructure and hundreds of servers and thousands of servers and things, just gets out of there. Plan for dependency help. Plan about what's consistent amongst your different open source applications and how you can bring them in and what they do. You know, this sounds like, well, this sounds like a CTO's job. Newsflash, no. He may be part of his job. It's your job as a CISO. You have to think about stuff like this, and you have to ask hard questions about from your architecture and your CTO. You can't depend on them to do this. You have to ask the questions. Put in a support or replace strategy around this stuff, and SBOMs can help. As I say, being able to create an SBOM and have that ability to take and use that to be able to inventory your software and know what you have out there is huge, because you can understand it. At least with open source, you have the source, you can run the tools, you can't get an SBOM out of it. What is an SBOM, by the way? I will think my next, no, I don't have my next, but my last slide, software bill of materials, what that stands for. So it's just a way of knowing what's in your software and understanding, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then we got all this fun about AI that's now popped up and issues around AI. And this is something that we're, you know, actually struggling with in terms of real life, you know, sorts of applications in government, things like that. And that is, you know, how do you do verification? How do you know that that stuff is correct, that the model's correct, that the inputs are correct, that everything is what you think it should be in terms of when it comes in the door? How do you fight manipulation? How do you make sure that you got your prompts, so you don't get prompt poisoning and you don't get model poisoning, and your models are actually decent to begin with? And by the way, where'd your models come from? I mean, to Azure's credit, they've now got curated models that you can pull out. I don't know how good the scanner is on those curated models, so I'm not sure what they're curating and what they do, but at least they have a curated model. But, you know, these other ones like Hugging Face and stuff, you know, God knows where some of those things come from. So, you know, I'm very concerned about, you know, the model manipulation and where this model stuff is coming from. Validity, you know, is it valid? Is it real? Is it hallucinations? You know, that's a question we always have to ask with AI in terms of what you're getting as answers. And then control. You know, being able to know how it's doing it and where it's going with these things so that you don't suddenly wind up getting answers, making decisions off the basis of the fact that there's been prompt poisoning or something happened to it that caused it to go veer off. You know, every product and every presentation has to have AI in it now, so I have to always do it. And then reliability, of course, is something that's always important to talk about. And then, you know, we have to think about this in devs and the DevOps and AppSec. In terms of service-based architectures, the SBOMs really help you when you're doing service-based architectures, and they give you a way to think about with the service-based architectures in terms of where you're going to park stuff and working with legacy apps and making them manageable. But again, getting back to the SBOM piece of that, about how you can help work through that. A contained environment for isolating anomalies, because you got services, you can segment. This is segmentation. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but I believe in segmentation at all levels. You should have segmentation is not just a network topic. Segmentation is a topic for monolithic applications. Segmentation is for how you think about services. Segmentation is about everything, because you know, just like you know the old saw about how do you eat an elephant. Well, the idea is you eat it one piece at a time. You know, you have to segment to get so you can do that. That's true for any large project. So why in security should we think we could take it on something monolithic and take it all as one whole and do something with it? We can't. We have to segment it down in pieces we can manage and control and do something around. And then we can start, if we can parameterize it, we can start to put automation around it. We can start to understand it and sort of do something with it that we couldn't do if we had to take it just as an elephant and then try to manage that thing as in its entirety. It just eats your life. And then the ability to whitelist via digital signatures, and then it lends itself more easily to network segmentation, of course, and then decentralized risk and save costs. Containers are clearly our way that goes. And I was talking about the segmentation, you know, doing it down to the container level in terms of nano segmentation, micro segmentation is at the application level. Then you can go into coarse grain segmentation in terms of, okay, I got something in the US zone, I have something in the Europe zone in terms of cloud services that I'm using, or in terms of the user segmentation, where I can actually take and divide up users. Because it's much easier to look at a small group of users that are privileged and make sure that they're not doing risky location login or something odd that you know you should be thinking about, versus trying to look at your entire population and then try to take care and do that. I mean, you know, risk management comes down to a resource problem. People don't understand that. There's a famous quote I always used to use in my talks that was from Dean Rusk, used to be the old Secretary of Defense back in the 60s. And it says that if you have diamonds and you have paper clips and you protect them equally, you'll discover very quickly you have very few diamonds and a lot more paper clips. And so you have to make choices about stuff that you prioritize versus stuff that you don't. And you actually make active choices to say, this stuff I'm not going to care about that much. This stuff I'm going to care about a lot. And you have to make those choices every minute of every day in your role as a security professional. That's just life. And you think about it in life, you do that. You know, I cross the street, you know, is that sushi in the airport look okay? I mean, you make risk management decisions all the time. And you know, I don't recommend it, by the way, unless you're in, you know, Tokyo or someplace. But anyway, risk management decisions are important. And then there's different segmentation strategies of networking and hypervisor and distributed segmentation in terms of cross geographies in different ways. Now we get the SBOMs. Alan Friedman is the CISA person who's been driving a lot of the SBOM work that's going on there. And as apologies to Alan about stealing his slide. But what happens is that you've got your development lifecycle, you get your supply chain, you get your vulnerability management, you get your risk management, and then this is your software going from you writing it to using it. And the idea here is that SBOM has something to offer you all through all these different places as you go through it, all the way through that cycle. Because what happens is the SBOM, if nothing else, when you're doing software reviews, lifecycle reviews and stuff, that's Microsoft, we host called the manifest. Remember everything's done manifest. And the idea was that was your to-do list. You know, I had to make sure that everything in my manifest got ticked off. And that's what an SBOM is in some ways, is that these are much more complete and a little more, you know, designed for automation than manifests were, but it's the same idea in terms of how you think about manifests, how they work. Did you have a question?
Yeah, no, it's been, I heard that it's not correlated to like fluoride on the food and beverage.
Yeah, I would say it's closer to the ingredient list. That you know, except for when it gets to spices, and you don't know what spices means, but it should be more specific than that. But what it does is it says, it's got oats, it's got, bran, it's got, water, and that sort of thing. And this is the same thing here. This has got, it's got log4j, it's got, X11, it's got, and then all the different pieces to go through that, down through that whole stack. So you have a fairly comprehensive list of the whole stack. The idea being is that where this really comes into its own is when you start doing like vulnerability management, for instance. I can take a look at the correlated, database of all the SBOMs across my organization and look at it and say, okay, where do I have log4j? Because there's now vulnerability in that. So I can find across my organization every app that has log4j in it, and what version it is. And now I can go through and actually take, and call up the vendor, say, hey, I need a patch now, please. Oh, we have log4j? Yeah, you do. We need a patch now, please. And things like that. Yes, sir.
That means you have a good CSP, you have a good component level, all your hosts, all your environments, all users, you have that inventory of
That's-
all.
That's nirvana, where we're going. We aren't there yet, it's over, it's like they always say, it's over the hill, but we're getting here. But at least for the important, again, going back to the prioritization of risk piece, for the important stuff, I care a lot about this. Like if you're looking at, say, an ERP system, for instance, I care a lot about an SBOM and an ERP system. Do I care about the SBOM on an access control system? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, depending on if it's like air gapped or not. It depends. There's a risk management choice I have to make there. But you certainly, for an ERP, we're going to care a lot about that SBOM.
And what about the situation where software, let's say even in open source, it brings libraries in, but you don't compile it, but your vulnerability management system detects it.
Then, as I say, it doesn't.
So in other words, maybe you have a library that's on disk,
Right.
but that doesn't mean it was compiled into your code.
Well, the idea is that the SBOM should be all the active components in your application if it's done correctly.
But
It shouldn't necessarily be,
You have that manifest, you have, like log4j is a good example, right?
right.
But I compiled with like a switch that said, don't compile the log4j component.
Right, well, there's two types of SBOMs that people run. There's I have the source code, I'm gonna inventory every, component in there. There's a different one I'll take a binary, and it's in essence sort of like a binary decompiler or whatever you call that we used to run, where you go through and you would get back out, all the function calls that are in there, so you actually know what's in the binary as opposed to what's in the source over here. Or, if the source correlates directly, where then not in the options, but at least, frankly, even if it is over too much, I'll take too much over none. Frankly, I'll take a goose chase now and again versus not having the information. That's always an easy risk management call to make. I'll drown in information and maybe happily drown in it, but I'll not have it. And so I think that's an important point to make as well. Anyway, you'll hear more about SBOMs, but the thing that's important about this is that there's now a lot of traction behind these and where they're going. And again, that's something, if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. Where this is really happening is all government procurement is now starting to require it. It's going to be an absolute requirement. I think in 2 or 3 more years, it's going to be an absolute requirement. Is it 2? You cannot sell to the federal government that you don't provide them SBOM. And so this is already getting provided now by several different vendors that I've seen that are out there doing it. And so they are a reality of life. And so you need to understand them, you need to know how to use them, you need to know how to get them, and you need to ask your vendor for them. Because the problem you're going to run up to, and it's maybe a question for our lawyer over here, but you can imagine the lawsuits are going to happen as these things become popular, and you're going to start asking the opposing side, well, did you have SBOM? Did you look at your SBOM? This is going to become legal liability, and this is what's going to drive a lot of legal liability. And so you have to pay attention to these. These are going to be important. And it also applies to downstream libraries and open source. As I said, you can't just focus on the high level. You have to have it down to wherever the rubber meets the road as far as the bolts are. Vulnerability automation is here. It's called VEX, for vulnerability exchange is what it's known as. Yes, VEX I used to be in the Vex subgroup and I got lost doing this SaaS stuff, but Vex I love. But anyway, what Vex is that's an ability to, with the context of an SBOM, be able to exchange vulnerabilities in an automated fashion. So that. Something I said?
Just flaked out.
No, we're talking about vulnerabilities.
The appearance to be live.
Okay.
The room that.
Okay. The room doesn't like us. Anyway, but the idea behind Vex is that you basically can have an automated exchange of vulnerabilities. So the manufacturer can, if they find a vulnerability, can identify the vulnerability in the context of the SBOM and then transmit it to you electronically, so you can pick it up and to act on it and know it's there. And so what's nice is I can in an automated fashion, almost if you think about Nirvana again, I can push my button and get a whole list of vulnerabilities across my organization, which would be really nice to have, as opposed to depending on CVEs, which are now, how far backlogged are we now? Is it 4 months?
2020 now, that haven't been
Right,
enriched.
right. And so that's, Vex fixes that. Because it puts the responsibility where it belongs on the vendor, as opposed to the third parties.
While we're waiting for this to come back, we have a good question
Sure.
in the chat. How is SBOM data typically protected? Couldn't bad actors use SBOM data to hunt for target applications running a node vulnerability?
Well, okay, I'm gonna answer the question two ways. The first one is that there's a protecting SBOMs in the context of they should be signed and they should be valid. So there's a whole content integrity piece of that, which I think is important. So that's something to think about. The question they're asking is more on the side that everyone asks, well, doesn't this give the bad guy a roadmap to all my stuff? Sorry, he already has it. It's ridiculous. He already has it. If he doesn't have it, he's got a fuzzer who will give it to him. And if he doesn't have that, I can name you 5 different companies and 15 different pieces of open source software that will give it to you. So, there's an old saying that Frank and I know very well: security with obscurity is not an answer. And that's what that is. And I get, there are very good security professionals that make that argument, and I get so frustrated with them because it is security by obscurity. I'm sorry, there's just no other way to say it. It is not an answer. I get opinionated about that one. I'm sorry, but that one comes up every time, and it really is security by obscurity at the end of the day. Other question.
What happens when, I use a component, there's a CD, somebody from the federal government calls me and says, hey, there's the CD, you have to patch it, and there is no patch, and then even it's not a serious enough vulnerability. For example, there's component level denial of service, for example.
Right.
Nobody's going to try to do a denial of service on a specific component.
Typically, what will happen is you can give them back. I have a compensating control that I put into place. Either it's isolated on my network behind firewalls, there's a network segmentation piece so nobody can hit it in that particular port, or there's some other compensating control I can apply that you can then give them and say, look, in terms of until it's patched, I can put this compensating control in place. And typically they'll accept that as being rational.
The developer accountable.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
I mean, this idea that somebody has a vulnerability in their, and again, like what you said at the beginning, a lot of stuff is now unmanaged, but then maybe you should probably not use that library.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are starting to pull that library, do their own development and put it in the internal repository.
I just found a great website that I was going to share with everyone, and I don't have a dry erase marker, but I forget the ending. It's very cool, but the website is endoflife.something. And it's a website that inventories every piece of software imaginable and when its life ended. And so that if it's on that list, that's the website, that software is no longer being supported and you shouldn't use it anymore. It's a great website. I recommend it. I hadn't thought about it or I've seen it before until somebody pointed it out to me. And it's actually a pretty interesting one. But it aggregates together everybody's
Date.
end of life date, and it tells you exactly when the last version of that software went out, and that anything beyond that, they're not going to support it. And so it's a really great tool to use that I highly recommend to people. So end of life date is what it is. For formal accountability for vulnerabilities is here. As I was saying, you're going to start seeing lawsuits on the basis of vulnerabilities. And it's gonna be on the basis of the fact that you now have accountability and have responsibility. And, you know, as a CISO, if I'm gonna be accountable, I'm sure as heck gonna push that back on to my vendors. And I'm gonna say, look, I'm responsible, you guys are too. And you're gonna see this chain effect where everyone's gonna start having to pull up their pants and to get busy and do what they need to do to get their stuff fixed and get it done properly. And it's gonna be very important.
Yeah, or a US senator is gonna write a letter to the FTC and the SEC telling them to investigate and prosecute you,
Yes,
which is always fun.
yeah, yeah. And so I just think it's the tip of the iceberg though, because I think that the liability law, bar is gonna pick this up and run with it really fast, if they haven't already. This is gonna be a whole new set of tort laws out there that they're gonna be picking up on. Accountability for content and processes here. Again, going back to the SBOM, you can have an SBOM for process too, and that's what I'll talk a little bit more about in terms of the SaaS SBOMs, because there's an SBOM that consists of process. Because there's no reason why I can't account for what is my process for something just as much as I account for what are my software components for something. And that accounting for, and it's something like, we used to have for the SDL, for the security development lifecycle. You had to show that I'd done A, I'd done B, I'd done C, I'd done D before we'd sign off that you had actually gone through that. That has an SBOM for the software development lifecycle for that piece of software. That's not the components. It's about the process that you went through to arrive at that end state in that piece of software. So that's another piece of this. Again, creating that accountability, creating the process and the proof of that process. Tools exist to identify code provenance. That gets back to what I was saying about security to obscurity, but also about the fact that you can now pretty clearly and easily identify what's out there. I've run several scanners myself, and I can now tell you, okay, that came from there, that came from there, and that came from there. And then I can understand my vulnerability posture much better than what it is or what it used to be. It's interesting that I have third-party tools that are now starting giving up on CVEs. They're actually using different libraries because CVEs have gotten to be so bad in terms of the backlog and what's going on there. Attestation is being driven down the supply chain. And so if you're in a software manufacturer right now, I'm the buy at the top of the chain who's yelling at you to do something, or if I'm not yelling at you, I'm yelling at a vendor that you sell components to who's going to start yelling at you. So if you think you're immune, no, that rock is rolling downhill and it won't stop until it gets to everybody. And so it's just a matter of time. So responsibility to obscurity doesn't work either. You can't avoid that. It's coming to the supply chain. And as I say, risk is being pushed down because people since there's now real liability attached to risk, the standard mitigation strategy for risk is I push it down to my suppliers and have them help be my risk partners in doing this. And that's very much happening right now. Joe, so you have a question? Sorry, okay.
There's a risk with pushing the risk down, which is what I've started calling indemnity theater, where you push it down to a small enough entity. They don't have any money to compensate for whatever they may have caused. So you have to be very careful in the supply chain. Is not just is the liability pushed contractually down, but is that worth anything at the end of the day? Well,
you have to, where I've compensated for that is I worry about the next fish up in the ladder. And so you as that next fish up in the, you're right, but the liability for that, if I'm at the top of the food chain, I don't worry that I worry about the one rung below me. And that run below me has to worry about, and so you do like this. And so I would push that all the way down to whatever that tier is right above that person that can't support the indemnity. And it's going to be on them. That doesn't mean that you don't get a domino effect and it all rattles up, but at least there's somebody in there that's got resources and money. It's going to have to go out and fix it. And that's what happened. That's what happened at other places too, is they either had to bring it in-house or they had to fix it somehow or do something about it. And so there are ways to enforce that, but if it just depends on where you are in the supply chain. But yes, you have to pay a lot of attention to what's that first tier look like underneath me. And that's where you have to be careful of what you're bringing in the door in that first tier, because that's the one you are on the hook for, as opposed to the ones that are further down the stack. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's the people forget about it because they just assume that there is indemnity, so the risk is covered. It's like it's not.
No, I always, I over the years, I've dealt with a lot of vendors. In fact, I used to be famous in Silicon Valley for, what would happen is I'd have the senior sales reps always bring their junior guy in, just so I could beat them up, because they like to sit and eat popcorn and watch me, but they also use it as a learning experience, because the way I treated vendors was, I was always very fair and very kind to them, but I always took the thought was that you are my partner, and I have expectations of you, and I give you 3 strikes. And I write that into my agreements with you. The first strike is, if you mess up, then I'm gonna get you, what's gonna change in your process. I don't care who did it, I don't care how it got done, what I care about is what changed in your process of your organization that means that's not gonna happen again. And that's the first strike. The second strike is if it happens again, then I'm gonna get in the middle of your process, and I'm gonna go into your organization, and I'm gonna work with you and help you fix whatever it is that's broken in your process if you're an important enough vendor. If you get a third strike, then I don't do business with you as a vendor anymore, and I walk away, and you go, I'll go get a different vendor, because I can't do business with you. And if you don't take that attitude, you wind up on the Titanic more often than not, because you know, everything is fine, really ignore the iceberg, and your whole organization is sinking because you haven't fixed the processes that are underneath it that are broken. You have to take a really firm attitude with these folks and work through that about what changes in your process. Because the cosmetics, if we fired, you know, the guy or you know, we now papered over with a checklist or something interesting. I want to know what's really root cause in your process has changed. It's going to make a difference to do that. And that's really been important and transformational for organizations to do. I'm sorry, yeah.
You have like, I don't know if it's a checklist, but like a process for vetting vendors.
I do. A lot of it's in my head, unfortunately.
Oh.
But a lot of years of doing that. But what I do is that what I'm really looking for is that there is a track record of really excellence in terms of business process improvement. I'll take on a startup, but I'll take on a startup that I can demonstrate to me that they have a unique value proposition and they've got enough funding and enough runway that they can engage in business process improvement. If it's somebody who just shows up and has a great idea and some interesting technology, I'll wait for some larger vendor who can do business process improvement to take it up. Because the problem was that as they run out of runway, you've now got a useless piece of tech you've invested in, and they're not there for the long haul. So being a partner of someone means that you got to look at them and not just in terms of, you know, just, you know, they're great for that short period of time. You have to look at them for, I mean, somebody I've invested in the long haul, because you're investing in it too. I'm investing in my time, I'm investing in my money, I'm investing a lot in that guy. So if it's a low bar, I'll buy, you know, something that's, you know, that's pretty risky, you know, in terms of their startup, you know, lifetime. If it's something that it's in a no risk, no, you know, it's just a throwaway sort of thing, then I can replace them anyway. But typically, even you incur cost. Everything has a cost, and you're always making that trade-off. Is this worth the amount of investment and cost that I'm going to have to take this guy on and do it? And so you have to be very careful about how you allocate that out, because pretty old, you know, it's like the old adage about how many bags of Doritos can you open before you can't get to them all, and you have a bunch of stale Doritos at the end of the day. I mean, that's the idea. You only have so much time to get into those things, so you better pick and choose which one you want instead of, you know, if you like the Cool Ranch ones, but you better focus on the Cool Ranch ones as opposed to the hot ones you're not going to get to in the right period of time. Does that make sense in terms of? I'm sorry, I'm bad at, I do analogies. All, you know, Frank knows this about me. I do this all the time. But does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why.
Sure. Yes, sir.
One thing in the old days, we used to do like a 1, 3, 5, you know, short term right now, midterm, we're getting there, and what's on the forefront, what's on the plan, the building plan. And in the evolution today, it's like today, tomorrow, and next week.
Yeah, I agree. The time frames of stuff is compressed a lot, and there is, bless you, there is a different velocity that's associated with cloud services, and because there's no infrastructure, you know, it's a lot easier than it used to be in terms of bringing it in, installing it, everything else that used to be, and so there's a lot less friction in doing that. It doesn't mean that the risk has gone down, or the potential costs have gone down in some ways, but there's certainly less friction. And so I'll take that into account, that if there's less friction to take on that cloud service to do something. And so that's a big change. I mean, that didn't used to be the case, because it used to be the case you had to, bring in, professional services, have them install on your server, get it turned up, get it figured out, get it backed up, get it working right, get it secure, everything that goes with that.
That different trade-off today, now it's shadow app, shadow IT, shadow.
Oh, yeah,
Shadow.
I fight shadow IT every day, all day. And the way you fight shadow IT successfully is by, well, there's that, but basically the way you fight shadow IT is you really have to be in your customer's business. You have to understand what the priorities are, and you need to make sure that you are working with them and partnering with them, and you have a plan to meet their needs. Because the reason they're doing shadow IT is, in some cases, it's just, the cool shiny bauble that their friend has. But in a lot of cases, it's because they have a real business problem that hasn't been addressed. And so you have to go in and understand their business and understand what they're doing and address their problem. And that's how you solve shadow IT. I will tolerate a certain amount of shadow IT, so long as it's for something not important. But when they start coming and saying, I need to, access to your data, or I need access to this, or that's where I have gates that I can put down and say, nah, sorry, we have to put this through more formalisms and make it right.
Yeah, but Doug, with shadow IT environments, it's, you go basically from prototype to production immediately. There is no such thing as making sure it gets tested, making sure you validate. You're literally, the minute you have that environment, I talk about this obviously being a cloud provider.
Right.
There is no such thing as a test in production. It's live, it's production.
Right, but I guess the issue is that most shadow IT that I've run into at some point wants to be able to tie into your login system. They want to tie into your role-based system. They want to tie into some data, some flavor to your people, something like that. Those are gates that I can put up that can give me an opportunity to vet what they're trying to do. There's other things that don't require that they go on. And as I say, I put up with a certain level of that, but it's about understanding where I have assets I care about. And I'm taking care of those assets I care about. And I do have some guardrails around maybe keeping the more wildly weird things from happening.
I don't know, this is like starting to like slip off of SBOM, but
Right.
it seems to me that the best way to manage shadow IT is be really well partnered with your CFO. Right?
True.
Because once you know where the credit cards are and the spending.
What's your saving limit?
No, that's what saved me at McAfee was I lived in the CFO's office. And you're right, I didn't have a lot of control over, hey, I just got this invoice for something, and then I would go down and have a conversation. But the same token was that, I worked very hard on the way I talked about it was that people walk in demanding something. I need a database to do X. My first conversation with them was about, okay, show me how that works in a flow chart on a piece of paper. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't have it. And I say, take a piece of paper, take a pencil, design what you want, then come back and let's have the conversation. And then you have them come back and you show what you have on the cocktail napkin. And then you can actually have a rational conversation with them about how they can get to a different yes. I tried never to be Dr. No. You have to always try to get to a yes. And so that's really what's important is how you can negotiate a yes. Because that's what keeps you from what, actually being fired in a lot of organizations is you have to be able to negotiate a yes. But you do it in a way that mitigates risk, that, does it in the right way and works with it. But it's actually more than the CFO. It's actually your risk manager now that you have to take care of. In a lot of organizations, they're the same person. But in a lot of organizations now, that's actually been capped off. So you actually got a risk manager and you got a board member that's in charge of risk management and the CFO. So you actually have to be friends with both roles, both the risk management role and the CFO role, if you're going to be successful, because they're both very important. Because the risk manager role is the one that's going to be, doing a tap dance in your head if something really bad happens. And the CFO over here is the person that, as you say, controls the purse strings. But you can get the risk manager to tell a CFO to say, no, don't approve that because it's too risky. And so it's another gate you can put in. I create speed bumps and gates to try to corral as much of this as I can. That's all you can do. And then partnering really heavily. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. You have to show up. You have to walk around. You have to know people. You have to say, how you doing? You have to ask them innocuous leading questions about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it's time consuming and boring and every pejorative imaginable, but you learn so much and you head off so much bad stuff at the pass. It just is amazing how much you do. That's the biggest lesson over to Microsoft. I had more meetings on my calendar than I care to count, but I got much more done because I networked with all these different product teams and understood what they were doing and how they were doing it. And when they had a problem, they would call me. And that was huge. So the relationships counted for everything in terms of getting the right thing done as far as the risk and risk management.
Have you considered fine tuning a new dog model and selling that? For all your experience and knowledge?
I actually wrote a book, that was published a long time ago inside the mind of CTOs. I wrote it with the CTO of General Electric, but that was a long time ago. So I have to revisit that and see if I need to write a new book in the process here. The frequency of change for software as a service is a huge difference. And we've talked about that in terms of the fact that it's production, today. And everyone's building and, piling on all these other services. And that's where SBOMs, again, hugely important because you can see, hey, they swapped out this one module for something else, or they use something using Oracle as a provider over here. If I didn't have an SBOM, I wouldn't know that because it's a black box. And this gives me a way to get transparency in there so I can see what's going on, so I can see what's in that black box. Then we have the volume and shared origin of software and services involved, and who's responsible. That's the other piece of SBOM that I think is really important, is you can now start to pin the tail on a donkey and not have people, pointing fingers and flopping around about who's responsible for something. Because you can point to it and say, look, that software is X, and that it says in the SBOM came from Y. Y is on the hook for what we need to get done here. And so you have that accountability and that responsibility because you have it documented and it's transparent and I can see it. I mean, that's always been my biggest complaint about cloud services is they're much too opaque.
But when they push from like CI/CD from GitHub, their SBOM yesterday and their SBOM, their version control SBOM market today, tomorrow, next week, they'll be different.
Absolutely, but the idea though is that
How often do they have to deliver?
well, that's where automation comes in. Yeah, that's right. You have to have automation, number one. And Vex is important because you can correlate it back. And then you have to work with them in terms of making sure the responsibility is there. But that's turning into now a legal document that's important and people are going to pay attention to it. So I get that there's gonna be a lot of churn with it. Meaning, I would imagine that in some cases, but the flip side of that is I would think that to some degree, you're not making that big of an architectural change. Typically, it's you're fixing a bug or something. So maybe version numbers that are tweaking around, but I don't see the actual major components change all that much. I see version numbers more than anything tweaking. And so that's the piece that trickles through. That's the piece I care about. I care about the version, about which one they're running.
These are the fix. Those
Right.
little short ones are usually a fix of the bug
Right.
versus a feature head.
Right, and that's important because that's the information you need. There's a lack of definitive boundaries both horizontally and vertically. And what that is that now with cloud IT, I've got, used to be, I used to have to worry about boundaries vertically. Okay. I used to worry about where in the stack are you and who's your job and what you do. But now everybody's integrated now horizontally. So now I have to worry about, okay, it's Amazon. I have to worry about Amazon's firewall, and then I have to worry now vertically about this app's integration. Oh, they tie up to some more Oracle hosting over here. Maybe it's an Oracle database or hosting over here. And so I got all these different pieces that I have to then correlate back into this one over here. And so that's important that, both I got these two dimensions now. And that's why, again, an SBOM is important because I have a two-dimensional problem I'm trying to solve, not just a one-dimensional problem like I used to have in terms of where the boundaries are. And then this, as I said, opacity, the fact that you can't see, it's not transparent. This is a way to pry open the black box and be able to see inside, know what's going on in there, both at a process level and as I say, I need to know both your process and your what your actual software is. I just brought back a memory about, I remember being in AWS and I was looking at having AWS to actually, they used to have a service, they probably still do, where they would be a certificate vault for you, a certificate locker. I remember reading their description. I read every piece of material they published on it, and I was still terrified because it was absolutely opaque. They had no clue what they were doing, how they were protecting it, what they were doing with anything else. Because they had all these great descriptions over here, and they had all this discussion over here, and there were the two correlated that I could actually say that was actually getting applied over here. Because they could point to this and say, well, we do it like this. Well, do you do it for this? Well, I can't tell you that. And I can never get the two correlated. And so it just scared the bejeebers out of me for something as important as certificate management, how they were doing it, what they were doing, and where it was. And that gets back to this question of, if I had SBOMs, I could do that. I could say, okay, that correlates with this secure process here. I can see the details of it, so I can make an informed decision about whether I want to trust it or not. One of the things that we wound up doing was, and this is, I'll take blame, was we went to personas, and everybody who knows Microsoft knows that Microsoft loves their personas. But anyway, we had different personas that we were trying to work with, and one of them is a producer. And that's the producer is someone who is actually trying to manage risk both for themselves and their customers. They're trying to actually make sure that this is transparent, to know what's going on. And they have to communicate information about services and practices to their customers and what they're doing. We have operators. And so, the first one is to think about this as a producer would be like AWS. This is what they're doing. An operator is somebody who actually is operating it. And so they need to know, how is this being in the context of my infrastructure? Let's say I'm using Intro for my AD. Well, that's pretty critical. And I need to know how that fits into my infrastructure and what that's doing. So I have ability to manage risk for myself. And if I have a third party downstream for me, how I'm managing it for my customers. And then I need to communicate information about services and practices so that I can staple Microsoft's intra SBOM to my SBOM. And I can say, here, I have complete transparency about what's going on because I got my SBOM for my provider here, my SBOM for me, and you can look at both of those and you now have complete transparency into my processes about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And then there's vulnerability management, again, being able to get that in an automated fashion and be able to act on it quickly. And accountability for my vendors. I can poke at them and say, hey, you need to fix that. There's a chooser, which is an interesting persona that you have. And that's actually the guy who's out there making the purchase decisions and how they want to do it and what they're doing there. And you have to have accountability for vendors in that. And then I have to have transparency in my risk management. And then a subscriber is unique in the cloud. And you have transparency around that as well. Just a quick example of that is, the WebP. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. That was the one that was a serious one, the web browsers. Well, if we had SBOMs for everything, then we simplified a job of different personas. It would make me understand what was happening if I had thin clients working. It also lets me understand, how that fits in with my web applications and third-party services and how that comes together in terms of cloud services and what that goes. So calls to action. Identify areas where more standardization is needed, including a software interchange format to increase transparency. That's a problem we have right now. There's not a good format for SaaS. There's a good format for SBOM for packaged software. We've had that for a while now for SaaS. And that process piece, that's still something that needs to get worked on. So that's definitely a piece that we have to work on. And really everyone has a role in this. As I say, you have to demand that your providers do it, and you need to understand your own role in this and what you're doing, where you're providing upstream and downstream from you. And then there's future work that we have to do on data governance, availability indicators, risk, and transitive service dependencies that come and go. How do we identify those and work with those? And these are not minimizing these, but we have a lot of work to do. But it took us a year and a half to get to that one in terms of where we are. I encourage you to read the paper. It's out there on the system website now, fully published. It's about software transparency for SaaS and services. And so I'm ready for questions. I know we're running up against the clock here, but I'll leave that there. But
only got a couple of just a couple of quick questions because one ask that I'll have is we got to wrap up this room pretty quick once we're done. I'll get everybody to help me flip your table up and stack your chair if at all possible. That'll help out a lot because 8 o'clock they definitely want us out. So you.
I just want to thank you for the presentation. I think it's good material. I'm in PCI. PCI Council is covering this in more detail with version 4 with regard to the software list. Make sure you got it all documented.
Dear software makers, it's here. Did you? Yeah, yes,
It's
sir.
a lot more accountable than like the SOC 2 lid service type stuff. How do you hold them accountable to what? Whereas
in their software, you can say, here is the.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a great tool to do that. I mean, that's the problem I've had. Up to now, I haven't had anything to use. I haven't had any leverage. I haven't had any way to point to it and say, look, this is that open. And now I have that. And so I can get into that lockbox, and this gets back to my principle, managing vendors. I can get in and understand it. I can get in and think, you know, hey, your process is broken right here, fix it, and then get your partner to fix it. And that's huge to be able to do that.
All right.
We gotta go.
Yeah, we gotta go. Unfortunately, thank you very much. Next month, we are, watch the website for an update. August, we will not have a meeting, just in case you're wondering. And obviously, we are welcome to join us. At least a couple of us will be at Roanoke, have some beer. It's a great way to just kind of wrap the night up. I don't know, it's just up the road from here, tradition, so please join us. Otherwise, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. At least you got a couple.